All right, so hello, everybody. Thank you for joining our Sustainable Broomfield speaker series. We're really excited to talk about biking in Broomfield tonight. So if everybody wants to just mute themselves except for our presenter, that would be great. And I think that he does have some interactive stuff, so you may ask questions. You can unmute yourself and talk during the presentation whenever he asks for that. So we've got two fabulous presenters tonight. So first we have John Hubbard with Broomfield Bikes, and it's kind of a biking advocacy group in Broomfield here. And then we have Jason Sharman with the Broomfield Bike Club, and he's going to tell us there's actually a really long history of Broomfield, the Broomfield Bike Club, and so he's going to give us a whole rundown of that. So we're going to start off with John tonight. So John, if you want to just share your screen and take it away.
All right, you should be able to see my presentation. Thanks, Brianna, for the handoff. My name is John Hubbard. I'm with Broomfield Bikes and happy to speak to everyone tonight. Thanks so much for joining. So let's get started. What is Broomfield Bikes? Broomfield Bikes is a grassroots community movement, so we're not associated with the official city and county. We advocate for bike trails, bike-friendly streets, better city design, and overall making biking more safe, convenient, practical, making it a more realistic option, and comfortable in Broomfield. I would say Broomfield does a really good job on trails. We've got some great open space, some great trails to take advantage of. What I hear a lot from people that I talk to is that the trails don't go where they need to go for their daily errands. And we're lacking a lot of the street design and the city design that really make a difference for biking in your day-to-day activities. So that's what we're going to talk about a lot tonight. I put this together in 2019. I realized, hey, there's not a bike advocacy group already in Broomfield. I moved here in 2017, so I wanted to get that started. I used to live in Fort Collins, which is a very bike-friendly city, and would love to see some of the same amenities here. Working towards 501c3 nonprofit status with Sustainable Broomfield is a role model there about how to get into the nonprofit and make a difference in the community. And in those 2 years, what have we done? Well, there's been several community events that we put together, including Broomfield Days this year. We work with the city to have crosswalks added in neighborhoods. There's a method to report debris or trash in the bike lanes. And the city's been a great partner in that. They can't be everywhere at once, obviously. So when I see debris or when people report debris to Broomfield Bikes, I pass that along to the city and follow up, make sure it gets cleaned up. One thing we did that was pretty popular this year was candidate questionnaires for city council candidates. Did that in 2019 and again for the 2021 elections, and published those on the website. Built a social media following. So we can talk all night about the pros and cons of social media and what that's done to us as a society. And if you want to go get lunch and talk about it, let's go do that sometime. But the fact remains, it's a great way to reach people. A lot of discussion takes place on Facebook and Nextdoor and Twitter. So we are on those social media sites. And also partnered with the City and County of Broomfield and a local business, Planet Cyclery, and had a bike repair station installed along the US 36 bikeway near Interlaken. There's no formal application process. You don't need to pay dues on an annual basis or anything like that. All you got to do is get out and ride a bike, encourage biking with your neighbors, with your family, with your friends and community. And we'll talk a little bit about a call to action at the end as well. So question for the group, this is an opportunity to come off mute, and I'd love to hear everyone. What's good, what's bad, and what's ugly about biking in Broomfield?
Hey, this is Craig. So I think there's some, this is kind of a mix of good, bad, and ugly, but there's some nice trails. I live in Anthem Ranch, so we have some really nice trails in the neighborhood. and there's some nice trails around the reservoir over here of Sheridan and Lowell and stuff, but there's a trail. So a couple things that's the bad and the ugly. There's no trails that really get me where I need to go other than just out for a bike ride.
Yep.
Like you mentioned, I think you mentioned already, John, if I want to go run errands, I'm pretty limited in how to access the places I would go to run my errands.
Yep.
And there's some trails that just kind of end, and they don't end at somewhere that seems like it makes sense. They just kind of end somewhere that I'm lost and I got to go figure out where to go from there.
Yeah.
So those are the things that I see.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Greg. And you're probably closest to Highway 7 if you're up there in Anthem, and there's a lot of commercial along there, but it's dangerous to cross Highway 7.
Yeah, I usually stay on this side of I usually ride to the south more than to the north. So I'm on the very southern side of Anthem Ranch, so I'm very close to Sheridan and the trails over there.
Got it. Great. Anyone else have some thoughts?
John, this is Patty McCool calling. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I'm a member of the Skystone community at 108 and Sims. And although I'm surrounded by Westminster, I'm not even sure where Broomfield is, because everywhere I go, across the street or north or south, it's still Westminster, but my mailing address is Broomfield. Anyway, my only way to get onto the Broomfield trails, not only, but I can ride back streets, but I take Sims to the lake, to Stanley Lake, and then I take Church Ranch to a side street to get back on Big Dry Creek Trail. And from there, I get into Broomfield because I ride north. And I'm very impressed by the trails. And I think my suggestions would only be for Westminster, I guess. I don't ride much in Broomfield except on the bike trails. And to me, they're absolutely lovely. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Patty. That is a definite strength of Broomfield is the trails. I'm not aware of a biking advocacy group in Westminster. If you know of anyone who wants to start one, please let me know. Not that I'm an expert, but I'd be happy to encourage them at least.
Well, John, we just started a biking club at Skystone. It's an over 55 community right at the intersection of 108 and Sims. And I think what I will do, is inform them of this group. I don't know of any biking group in Westminster either, but we don't live in Westminster. Or we live in Broomfield. It's just we don't get to Broomfield for a long time by bike.
Right.
So, but thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Patty. All right, we got time for one more person if anyone else has any thoughts they want to share.
Mira, and I'm on the phone with Isaac. And one thing that I've noticed is I like riding on the open space trails as opposed to on roads themselves. And a lot of the hours for the open space trail, it's just open sunrise to sunset. So that kind of creates an issue in the winter when you're trying to commute or just go around town. I mean, even 5 o'clock now, it's dark.
Right.
So you're technically, I think, breaking the law if you're riding past then. So just extending those hours maybe to like 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. or something, I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, great point. And that's something I hadn't thought of is parks and open space, they have hours of operation so that people aren't camping there, but are the trails still open? Is it clear? Are the trails well lit at night during our short Colorado days when we have a whole lot more darkness during the commute hours? So yeah, great points. Thanks so much.
We have one in the chat from
Ah.
Carson Priest with Smart Commute. He said this applies to most of the suburban North Metro, but most on-street infrastructure is lacking or is a bit Swiss cheese. It doesn't create a safe environment for many non-recreational or street riders.
Yes. Thank you, Brianna. I couldn't see the chat, and thank you,
Yeah, no
Carson.
worries.
Very insightful. Very true. And we're going to talk about on-street infrastructure today too.
And I kind of wanted to say that I agree with the former person. Riding on the streets is a little bit sketchy. I really prefer the trails. I feel much more comfortable there. While they have expanded them, particularly along Lowell in the last year or so, you've got those big curbs that you can run into, and there's no dodging it if a driver is not paying good attention and is veering over a little bit. So I feel pretty uncomfortable riding mostly the streets. I cross them, but I like riding the trails. I feel like they are a safer place for us to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're not alone in that. There's a lot of people, myself included, that would feel uncomfortable in the bike lane on Sheridan or Lowell or one of the more busier streets. And we'll talk about that today. So why bikes? You know, of all the issues you get involved with, why choose biking? So the first one, affordable housing. We know that's a big issue right now. Broomfield defines affordable housing as no more than 50% of household income spent on housing plus transportation. So bikes definitely fall under transportation. What would happen if transportation was cheaper for a household? What would it look like if a family with maybe 2 parents and 2 teenagers didn't need 4 cars, but they only needed 3 cars and maybe even 2 cars, and the rest of their needs they could meet with bikes or e-bikes? That would free up a lot of money in car payments and in insurance, especially. You know, that makes more money available for housing if transportation expense goes down. Air quality. For those of you that lived here during the summer, you saw the poor air quality, right? We had a record number of ozone alert days this summer, and at times the official guidance from the government was stay inside your house, do not go inside. There was an article in Colorado Public Radio that reported this wasn't primarily due to California wildfires. It was primarily due to transportation and oil and gas development within Colorado. So the more people we have on bikes, the more people we have walking, then the less cars on the road, and then that increases our air quality and reduces pollution. When it comes to climate change, transportation is the biggest generator of greenhouse gases in Broomfield and in Colorado and in the USA. So transportation, again, so if you want to make a difference in greenhouse gas emissions, start where it's biggest, start where you can have the most impact. Diversity, equity, inclusion. We're rightfully talking a lot about this lately. Not everyone is physically able to drive, right? Children, for the vast first years of their life, right? They can't drive, they just get carted around in the back of an SUV. Past a certain age, you know, people aren't able to drive anymore because their reflexes are slower. People are born with physical handicaps or have accidents happen to them and have handicaps. So these people still deserve dignity even if they can't drive a car. There can also be economic benefits. When it comes to alternative transportation, CDOT found that investing in climate-friendly infrastructure such as bike paths, which we've talked about, sidewalks, and increased transit could result in up to $40 billion in economic benefits. And that would come through reduced automobile crashes, fewer medical problems, less pollution, all of those things that are just overall better for our society. Municipal fiscal responsibility is a big way of saying city budgets, and how do you responsibly take in tax money and spend it. There's a very large cost of operating a street network that's just designed for cars. The pavement has to be kept up to date. We all know about pothole repair. When you want to move a lot of cars, you typically have wide lanes, which means more asphalt. That asphalt needs to be maintained. It needs to be cleared of snow. all that square footage really starts to add up. Widening 144th, I think everyone's familiar with that project. Not even 4 miles from Zunai to almost 287. That was $40 million that the city went into debt and took out bonds for. I can't help but think about how could we better spend $40 million and improve our transportation outcomes. If our end goal is to move people throughout the city, I think there's better ways to do it than widening one road for $40 million. Managing growth is huge. Broomfield was the fastest growing county between 2010 and 2020, according to the census. And in our minds, we've equated population growth with an increase in traffic and an increase in vehicle congestion. And a lot of people who oppose growth, that's one of the first things they'll say is, I don't want more traffic. I don't want more congestion when I'm trying to get across town. I'm worried about parking, right? Listen to any opposition to a new development and you'll hear this exact same thing. It doesn't have to be that way though. Seattle, the city up in Washington, it grew 21% between 2006 and 2017, but they managed to have vehicle miles driven fall 3.3% and transit ridership increased 41%. So it can be done. You can add more people without adding more cars. It just requires different policy choices. Public health. There's a big impact on public health when people start to bike. It gets people out of cars, gets more exercise, again, the air quality, and that helps people with asthma and other respiratory issues. And safe streets reduce deaths. We've had 5 deaths on Broomfield streets this year. And if there's less cars, then most likely there will be fewer crashes and fewer deaths. Social connection is a big one for me. So think about the connections you have with other drivers, the interactions you have with other drivers. Maybe there's some positive ones, like somebody lets you in and you give them a little wave. Mostly it's negative interactions, and those tend to build in our mind. That's why we have road rage, right? Where people go crazy and take it out on other drivers. But for those of you who get out on bikes and you get out on the trails or you walk your dog, think about the interactions you have with people on a trail, right? Are they more positive? I would bet so. You might compliment someone on their dog or say, hey, I like your bike, where'd you get it? Or you might make a comment about the weather that we're having, right? So social connection is a big thing when we're not in our isolation chambers with the windows rolled up, but when we can actually have human interaction. And I think that goes a strong way to building a community. And last one, it's sustainable, right? If you think about the inputs needed for driving, there's gasoline or maybe electricity to fuel it. You have to register with the state. There's insurance. Cars can be very expensive to purchase and maintain over time. An e-bike uses much less electricity and is about 20 times more efficient than the same electricity applied toward an electric car. So when it comes to moving humans, e-bikes are about 20 times more efficient. If you move that down to a pedal bike with only human energy, you don't even need electricity, right? You're just using your own legs and probably getting more fit in the process. And of course, walking is the most sustainable. It has the fewest inputs, and we're all about pedestrian rights as well. So that was a lot. I'm going to take a deep breath. This graphic was shown at the COP26 conference. A UK biking group projected this onto the wall. So what you're looking at is a big building with a projection up there that says, "This machine fights climate change." And it's a bicycle. It's something that's been around for over 100 years. It's a simple machine, and it's very efficient and very effective when given the opportunity. I mentioned obesity. Take a look at this chart. And when it comes to keeping us in shape, Colorado and Hawaii generally lead the pack as the least obese states in the US. But as you can see, Colorado represented here with the circles. Yes, we're below the national average, but we're still on a very unhealthy trajectory. So riding bikes is a great way to exercise and get around town. I contrast that with someone who might have a really long commute. Maybe they're sitting in their car seat for 1 hour, 2 hours a day. You know, that's a lot of sedentary time. All right, so we talked about why bikes. Now let's talk about goals. What are we trying to accomplish here? First and foremost is disrupting business as usual. So business as usual, what does that mean? That means whenever we have a problem of too many cars on the road or too much vehicle congestion, business as usual is widen the road, add more lanes, spend millions of dollars to make things bigger, just like we just did on 144th. If our goal is to move more people rather than move more cars, then we have different choices to make, right? Business as usual is whenever there's a new residential development or a new commercial development, nobody stops to ask, how are people going to get there? How will these new residents get to their jobs? How will these new residents get to the store? How will people get to this new restaurant? No one stops to ask that because it's just assumed it'll be cars. So changing business as usual means we would stop and ask that question and encourage alternative modes of transportation, maybe building more trails that go to the housing development or connecting trails that already exist so that people can ride a bike to a restaurant instead of feeling like they have to drive. And business as usual is complacency with traffic deaths, right? Car crashes between pedestrians and cars kill about 40,000, between 35 to 40,000 people each year in America. And we just kind of shrug our shoulders at that. And we're here to disrupt that complacency. Right now, we prioritize the experience of people inside cars more than the experience of people outside cars. So the goal here is equity between people who might be walking, people who might be biking, people who might be in a wheelchair, that they have the same positive experience getting around versus someone in a car. The 15-minute city is a concept that within 15 minutes of where you live, you can bike or walk to meet your most common daily needs. That would be, bike or walk to a restaurant, to a bank, to a bar or tavern, to get a haircut, to a transit stop to get to another part of the city. That may not be feasible in Broomfield because of current zoning and how we've laid out the city. For example, Craig, you said you lived in Anthem. Anthem, if you look at it from aerial photography, like on Google Maps, it's huge. It's huge. I don't know how people would feel about a corner store bodega in the middle of Anthem Ranch, but that would help meet our 15-minute city goals. Protected bike lanes, we're going to look at a lot of pictures of those. Bike parking is often overlooked. Car parking is actually mandated by Broomfield City Code. There's lines in the municipal code that say, if you're going to build a church, you have to have this many parking spots. If you're going to build a retail store, you have to have this many car parking spots. But there's nothing about you have to have bike parking, right? So if it exists at all, it's often an afterthought, out of the way, hard to find. Maybe you're worried your bike would get stolen or it get rained on, get snowed on. So bike parking can make a huge difference. Community events and open streets festivities, we want to connect with people, want to get out there, help people feel comfortable riding a bike, help people who just move here learn the trails and how to get around. Vision Zero is about having zero traffic deaths. It's a very widespread movement. It is possible. Many cities in other parts of the world have done it. I would love to see Broomfield City Council take steps towards embracing Vision Zero. The Denver Regional Council of Governments, Dr. Cog, already has, but it has not been adopted at the Broomfield level. When it comes to city staff, they have traffic engineers and transportation planners, but there's no dedicated person on staff that says, my goals, my metrics is to get more people out on bikes. I think that would be a wonderful position to have on staff with the city as someone who's charged with that. At the state level, we declared June as Bike Month in Colorado. I'd love to see Broomfield City Council do the same thing. We have citizen advisory committees. I think some of the folks here at the meeting tonight might even be on ACEs. I would love to see a biking advisory committee established to provide guidance and provide feedback and input back to the city in a more formal way. Participating in the Bicycle Friendly America program is a set of metrics. Colorado is currently ranked number 7 out of the 50 states. There's 23 other communities in Colorado that go through this, where you get rated, gold, silver, bronze, etc., based on how many metrics you meet, and the value is improving over time, right? We have this many protected bike lanes today. 5 years from now, we want to be able to look back and say, yes, we're moving in the right direction. Yes, we're improving. And lastly, this one is near and dear to me. I think it's near to dear and Jason as well, is a brewery that I can ride my bike to safely. I want to support local businesses. I don't want to drink and drive. It'd be much safer if I could ride my bike home after visiting a brewery. But from where I live, at least, I have to either cross 120th or Wadsworth or some other scary street in order to get to Rails End or Wonderland or Four Noses. So I would love to see us combining bikes and breweries in a way that people can get safely around town. Okay, picture time. This will go a little bit quicker, so thanks for hanging in there. I started out by talking about better city design and what that means. We're going to look at some pictures here. I have to warn you, some of the pictures that you're about to see may be illegal to build. And what I mean by that is there's the traffic engineer's Bible that they all have to follow. And some of what we're going to look at goes against the traffic engineering Bible in America. So some of these pictures are from other countries that have legalized better bike infrastructure. So we all know how it is today, where you have moving cars, then a bike lane, then a sidewalk or parked cars. What I like about this one is it kind of flips that on its head. You have moving cars, then parked cars, and then a dedicated bike lane, and then the sidewalk. So you have people that are walking and people that are biking closer to each other. And then the parked cars, think of maybe along midway, right? The parked cars would serve as a barrier here. And you're much less likely to get doored by a driver, versus where someone opens their door right in front of your bike. Not a pleasant experience. I do like the paint on the ground, makes it clear which direction you're going, makes it clear where cars should park. The plastic barriers are okay. There's better options there. We can take a look at that. Here's another bike lane. This one's raised up, so it's not in the street, but it's above the curb. It has some nice landscaping there. You can see trees and a light pole. Oftentimes, trees are removed from streetscapes because drivers don't want to hit them. And in order to have safe streets where drivers don't hit anything, we cut down trees or don't plant trees there. I think we should be going the opposite direction. Trees add a whole lot of value. They're much nicer to look at. There's the green paint here really jumps out as well, makes it clear which direction you should go, makes it clear it's a bike lane so people know not to walk in it. Here's another option. Again, we see lots of trees around the side. There's some green paint in the crosswalk, which is nice. And there's planters. I really like these concrete planters. There's a very big, very defined barrier here between where the bikes are and where the cars are, which is great. Here's another one. One thing I like about this one is shade. Here in Colorado, boy, do we need shade from that brutal summer sun. Again, we see the planters providing a very definite barrier between where the cars are and where the bikes are supposed to be. We're separated from parked cars. So again, no risk of somebody suddenly opening their door, which is deadly, unfortunately. And this one, again, we have landscaping there, creating that physical barrier, which is great. This bike lane is in the street. It's lower below the curb, right? But I would still feel safe riding along here because of those physical barriers. actually preventing someone from accidentally drifting in. The good thing about barriers like this is they send signals to drivers. When we're driving a car, we subconsciously pick up on things. And if there's friction there, vertical friction, you know, like when you're driving through a construction zone, for example, you kind of perk up and you want to make sure you don't drift, and you pay better attention, which is what we need. There's also, if you look over the gentleman's right shoulder towards the left of the picture, you can see some bike parking there. There's bike racks there, which is great to see. Here we have that curb protection again, very attractive landscaping there, big green paint in the intersection to make it clear, like if a car is there, it shouldn't be there very long because this is a bike path. It's denoted with bike icons, big green paint. There's other bikers here, which is great. I think people feel safer when they're not out riding alone, but when there's a group of people around you, kind of that herd mentality of strength in numbers. And again, we have trees over on the left-hand side. This one is great because it has bollards. That's the vertical green and white pegs along there. Those are very secure. They'll stand up to a whole lot of abuse. We have green paint and we have more trees. Here's another separated bike lane with landscaping, green paint, other bikers, trees, other bikers, trees, landscaping. You get the idea. Contrast that with what Broomfield looks like today. So this is Lowell near 120th, looking north. Sheridan looks similar. I got another slide of that. Here's Sheridan. This is between Midway and 120th. Again, you see no trees, no protection between the bike lanes. It's just paint. So it's no wonder that people don't feel safe riding their bikes along that bike lane. I would much rather be on the sidewalk in this photo than in the bike lane, because at least there's a physical barrier with that curb. And last one of what Broomfield looks like today, and I know I'm cherry picking ugly parts of Broomfield, but this is 120th. This is managed by CDOT. So to be fair, CDOT kind of has their full domain over what happens on this part of Broomfield. No bike lane, no trees, very wide lanes to encourage high-speed driving, which leads to more dangerous outcomes. There are a lot of state highways in Colorado, or excuse me, a lot of state highways in Broomfield, to be fair. US 36, 287, 121 Wadsworth, all of those have CDOT's dominion over them. So it can be hard to make changes at the local level. So what would better city design look like? So we're changing now from bike lanes to city design. A couple slides here. This is some pedestrian-oriented developments. We have COVID-friendly outdoor eating spots, which we've seen are in short supply later. Would you visit these places? I'm willing to wager, of course you would. They're aesthetically pleasing. They're friendly. They're going to be quieter without cars rushing through. There may be pockets of these places within Broomfield, right? But there's no critical mass. There's no core area where you could walk for blocks and have this kind of experience, right? Maybe there's a plaza at the Flatiron Crossing Mall, but nothing that extends over a significant part of the city. I called this slide "Why Johnny Can't Bike," not because of me being named John, but because of the old book, Why Johnny Can't Read. One thing that's jumped out to me is when you look at children's books, they're all drawing a part of a city that we don't have anymore, really. Here in this picture, you've got a grocery store, we've got a cafe, you've got a bank. So think of that 15-minute city where everything's kind of in close proximity. This is great for walking and biking, as shown in the picture, right? There's people walking their dogs, people pushing strollers, because you can get a lot of places in a short amount of time. If you picture the front of a big box store, like the front of King Soopers, front of Home Depot or Lowe's, very, very wide, but that only gets you one place, right? So better city design would be narrower, and you compensate with a narrower storefront by going vertical, or you go deeper. That lets you get a whole lot more destinations in a shorter area. So shifting through, now we're going to look at some charts and graphs, pros and cons of should we put in protected bike lanes. Pros are reduced fatalities and injuries. You get more people out exercising, cleaner air, less pollution, less congestion, people are healthier. The cons are some people might be mad. Some people who drive might get mad about it. I think this is an easy trade-off, and I'm willing to support more protected bike lanes. I believe our city leaders should as well. We talk a lot about why we need to slow cars down for safer outcomes. The short answer is higher speeds kill more often. This shows what happens if a pedestrian is hit at 20 miles an hour versus 40 miles an hour. So 13% likelihood of a fatality at 20 miles an hour versus 73%. I'd much rather take my chances at 13% at 20 miles an hour. 20 is plenty is a common saying in the Safe Streets movement, because 20 miles an hour still gets you there. It will get you there probably just as quick as 30, and it'll get everyone there safer as well. This chart is really interesting. I know it's kind of hard to read. It's how much transportation energy per capita in cities. North America is represented here with the dark gray color. You can see the bottom, that's density. So North American cities, not very dense compared to other parts of the world. And higher up on the chart means you're using more energy for transportation. Atlanta is literally off the charts here. If anyone's been to Atlanta, the amount of driving there, that probably doesn't surprise you. Houston, also a very sprawling city. But what surprised me was Denver is third. Denver is above San Diego. Denver is above Los Angeles. So that means we're using more energy in Denver to move people around. And I think we can do better than that. This is a quick recap. Biking uses less CO2, so you have a smaller carbon footprint. We don't have pollution from bikes, so air quality improves, and improves the quality of public space. Think about a giant asphalt parking lot that could be converted to anything else, any higher productive use, anything that generates sales tax revenue, like a store, anything that we would consider an amenity, like a park or open space. Any of those uses would be better than car parking. And Broomfield has a lot of land that we could repurpose from car parking to a higher, better use. Speaking of climate change and fossil fuel emissions, we see US is far and above other countries in our per capita. Earlier, I talked about moving people, not cars. This shows how many people you can move per hour with any given lane in the city. If it's just cars, you get about 2,000 people. If you jump that up to bikes, you get 14,000 people potentially moving. Pedestrians is even higher. So when it comes to not just moving cars, but moving people around the city, then you can see just a huge jump going to bikes. And then you get even larger jumps going to buses and rail and things like that. So it's a mind shift from moving cars to moving people. Here's the graph on why people don't cycle. It's a little sassy, I'll give it that. You know, the main point is cars are the danger on the road. Cars are what kill people. In Colorado, yes, we have hills, we have ups and downs. Those are overcomeable with e-bikes. We have good weather most days, like we were talking about at the beginning of the meeting. And trips of a couple miles, they can be equally fast on cars versus bikes. This one down here, appallingly short prison sentences for killing a cyclist. There's a book called If You Want to Get Away with Murder, Buy a Car, which is a dark title, but it talks about how murdering someone with a car is far less penalized in the eyes of the law, even if you're at fault, than killing someone with a knife or a gun or some other strange way. E-bikes, Belinda, you said you got an e-bike. I have one in my garage right now. It was just shipped last week, so I need to spend some time assembling it. E-bikes are outselling electric cars nearly 2-to-1, which is astonishing when you think about it. They're also a lot more affordable, and I think with COVID changes in the economy, people are deciding what they want to spend their money on, and an e-bike is a fraction of the cost of an electric car. And there's also tax credit. So look for a tax credit coming for e-bikes in the Build Back Better infrastructure bill. That's, I can't keep track of where it is in the process right now, but hopefully soon to become law. And this article from the New York Times, this is from November, so this month. All right, finishing up resources, where to find out more information. Broomfield Bikes is on Facebook, Twitter, and Nextdoor. The city and county of Broomfield runs broomfieldvoice.com. They have a whole section on there for transportation. So go on there, look around, see what's there, share your thoughts. A few years ago, the city and county did a whole bike and pedestrian assessment. They asked for feedback, they asked for conflict spots, and they published all that. It's a very long PDF. And there's also a map where you can read what comments other people have shared. Every couple of years, Broomfield does a community survey, and they just did one earlier this year. There's surprisingly a lot of info in there about biking and a lot of comments about biking as well. I read through all the comments about biking. There's definitely demand for safer biking infrastructure in Broomfield, I'll say that. Broomfield does have a transportation plan, a master planning transportation plan that's available. There's a website called Streets Blog that does a lot about safe streets. And there's a podcast called the War on Cars podcast, kind of a tongue-in-cheek title. It's not an actual war on cars, but it talks about transportation issues in America. What are we doing at a national level? What are people doing at a local level to improve transportation? Call to action. This is the final slide. I mentioned the Broomfield Voice page. Please go in there, create an account, share your thoughts. There's several active projects right now that the city is undergoing, including a midway corridor plan, wayfinding to improve navigation within the city, and then our street design, how the streets are laid out. Please do go in there and share your thoughts. That does make a difference. I have positive things to say about the Broomfield staff and the Broomfield City Council members. I just wish that we had the current vision and the current leadership, maybe 20 years ago about transportation, because then things might be different. It's much more cost effective to put in bike infrastructure when you're building out versus going back later and having to budget for a overhaul or rehab. City council members do read their emails. You can find their info on the Broomfield City Council website. Send them a letter, send them an email, ask them to prioritize Vision Zero, which is seeking zero traffic deaths, and also implementing traffic calming measures that make it safer and more comfortable to bike and walk in Broomfield. Broomfield Bikes, we do want your volunteer power, right? So send us an email, broomfieldbikes@gmail.com, with what you are interested in, what sort of events you want to do, what your passion is. Let us know. We'll put something together and collaborate on that. And then lastly, get out there and ride, get people to come alongside with you, which is what Jason's group is all about, which I appreciate so much. Over half of trips over half of car trips are less than 3 miles. So what if those were bike rides instead? We would have cleaner air, we'd have less congestion, we'd have lower fossil fuel consumption, overall positive outcomes for our community. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. All right, and we're going to jump real quick to Jason. We got about 15 minutes left, so we will do that, and then we'll have questions at the end. So go ahead, Jason.
All right. Thank you all. Let me just click this. So can everyone see my screen? Good. So Broomfield Bike Club is all about the good, fun part of bicycling. Bicycling, all those great things that John just told us all about. Our favorite thing is the fun. So what's more fun today than learning about history? And that's what I'm here for. If you want to learn about Broomfield history, there's a lot of good books out there, like Broomfield Changes Through Time, which sounds very Jack Handy, or Gem of the Mountain Valley, which I love. And if you're expecting to find anything I'm going to tell you in either of those books, you're wrong, because none of this information is in there, which is why it's so important to pay attention and learn this information here. Now, I would not recommend taking notes. Nothing I'm going to tell you today will be useful to you at all in your life going forward. But I'm going to start with the early days of bicycling in Broomfield. You might think that the bicycle is a fairly newcomer to Broomfield, but it's actually been here for a long time. This is a photo of Pierre Lacamora. Sometime around the turn of the century, and not just this recent century, the one before that, he came to Broomfield and he brought with him one of the first modern safety bicycles. These are the first bicycles that had a chain drive and brakes, and if you hit a bump, you didn't go over the handlebars. These things were great, and he loved bicycles and he rode them all over Broomfield. Unfortunately, riding around Broomfield in those days wasn't easy. The roads weren't paved. Everything was dirt. If you were lucky, it was packed gravel, and he tore around town on this thing all the time. And, you know, no suspension or anything, so he was serious about bicycles. However, bicycles didn't become commonplace in Broomfield until we paved everything for cars. After they subdivided the first filing in Broomfield, they set up neighborhoods, and suddenly the roads were smooth as silk and you could ride bicycles everywhere. Why? Because the car, not because of the bicycle. The people who took the most advantage of it were the children in Broomfield. As in much of the United States, bicycles were always seen as a toy for children, not as a appropriate means for an adult to get about. They used cars. Well, the kids knew better. These are a photo of the Broomfield cottage schools that existed in the early days before we built formal schools, and all the kids rode their bicycles to Broomfield, and it was great. They did try and bring bicycling to adults, and we, the Broomfield Bike Club, are not the first bicycle club in Broomfield. In fact, the first bicycle club in Broomfield was the Cycle Bells, formed in 1964. One of the great places to find this stuff, history about bicycling in Broomfield, is the newspapers. And we have the Broomfield Enterprise now, but before the Broomfield, it was the Broomfield Enterprise, it was the Broomfield Free Enterprise. And before that, there was the Broomfield Star, and then before that, there was the Broomfield Star Builder, and before that, there was the Broomfield Builder. And these local papers in Broomfield have all been scanned in and OCR'd and put on the internet, and you can word search them and find things like bicycling history. And what we found is in 1964, some ladies got together and formed a bicycle club called the Cycle Bells. And they were trying to ride bicycles mainly for exercise. It still wasn't seen by adults as formal transportation, but they enjoyed it and they got together for coffee. Now, I don't know what happened to the Cycle Bells, but apparently in 1966, 2 years later, they formed another bicycle club in Broomfield. This was formed in conjunction with the Broomfield Lions Club. It was a ladies' bicycling club. And as you can see from this article, it was promoted as having fun, great opportunity to make friends. That's really what bicycling is best for, is making friends and having fun. Although he mentioned how good it is for your heart and your circulation, but ultimately fun is what saved the day. And in 1966, this club for ladies got together on multiple times. We know all of the members, they rode on a regular basis. Now, bicycling became popular in Broomfield with the addition of the Broomfield Days Bicycle Parade. That was added in 1966, about the same time as the Broomfield Ladies Club was forming, and it has been a staple of the Broomfield Bike Parade ever since. But it was still a kids-oriented event because bicycling was still considered a children's activity until the 1970s. In the 1970s, when gas the gas crisis occurred, there was a boom in bicycling among adults. The bicycle suddenly was a fast and efficient way to get around. And the modern 10-speed bicycle imported from Europe became very popular. And it was still fun. This is a photograph of our founders in the Broomfield Bike Club, Brenda and Pat. Now, Brenda was an avid bicyclist. She rode all over town. We think she was a member of the 1966 bike club, but she would have been very young, so maybe not. Pat, on the other hand, he still loved bicycles, but he was completely and totally inept when it came to bicycle mechanics, couldn't so much as fix a flat tire. So in 1972, when he broke down with a flat tire that he was completely unable to remedy, lo and behold, Brenda rolled up, met him, fixed his tires, they fell in love and were married and together ever since. And they formed the Broomfield Bike Club as a good way to promote the fun of bicycling. Now, the Broomfield Bike Club got involved in city activities. For example, in the 1970s, the Broomfield Bike Club started the Friday night bike rides. The Friday night bike rides were a staple in the summertime. The bicycle riders would decorate their bicycles with tinsel and glitter and other things that would sparkle in the light. And they would ride around Broomfield purely for fun and social reasons. And this continued, but they also became somewhat more activist. So here's a photograph of Broomfield Bike founders, Brenda and Pat, during the creation of the new development that became the Lackamora neighborhood. Brenda and Pat promoted the idea that the neighborhood should be named after Broomfield's bicycle founder, Pierre Lacamora. And they convinced the developer and the city to accept that. And henceforth, the Lackamora neighborhood commemorates Pierre Lacamora. I'm sorry, I'm talking fast because John went so slow.
I apologize. I know I didn't leave you with much time.
That's all right. I'll rush through this and I'll make do. Now, we meet on Friday nights to this day for our Friday night bike rides at Lackamora Park because it's one of the most beautiful places in Broomfield to see the sunset. I was there just yesterday. It was lovely. And it commemorates Broomfield's bicycling history and its founder of bicycling, Pierre Lacamora. Now, Broomfield Bike Club continued to, to sponsor events, including Bike Mania. This was put on in conjunction with the city as a way to promote safe bicycling among kids and to create an atmosphere of bicycle-friendly streets in Broomfield. One of the events they had was Mike the Bike, who was an actor who portrayed a bicycle in a bicycle suit as basically a clown-like figure for the bicycle mania. And this was in the 1970s. And this kind of led to the downfall of the Broomfield Bike Club. The Broomfield Bike Club, everything was going fine, but at that event, unfortunately, Mike the Bike showed up to the event, both drunk and surly, and a lot of chaos ensued as Mike the Bike managed to get the children riled up to the point where all heck broke loose. And the problem is the city and a representative who had been at the event condemned the bicycle club because the bicycle club members didn't do anything to stop it other than sit in the corner and laugh. As a result, the Broomfield Bike Club is something that most people don't know about because they had to go into a non-public mode. And basically, we're an internal bicycle club that hung out and still rode bicycles for fun on a regular basis. Its members knew who they were. If people were like-minded and joined, they would be part of the club. It's not something that has a formal membership, and it continued this way from the 70s on until recently. But then during the pandemic, when we were all terribly lonely and bicycles became one of the best ways to get around Broomfield and be social, the Broomfield Bike Club decided they should not be as insular as they used to be and to throw the gates open so that other people can enjoy and be social with us. So the Friday night bike rides returned. This time, instead of tinsel, garland, and glitter, we used lighting and LED light strings, Christmas lights, and decorated our bikes. They glowed better than they ever did in the 70s, and we've been riding ever since. And we continue to ride from approximately May through Halloween every Friday night. We start at sunset, so the time changes with the sunset. We meet at sunset at Lackamora Park, departing shortly after the sunset time, and we take a bicycle ride on the bike paths through Broomfield. The ride is very leisurely. We take mostly bicycle paths. The few streets we go on are quiet streets, and we ride from Lackamora Park over to the Five Guys for a burger that's over on 120th by the Walmart. It's 5.5 miles. It's an easy bike ride. We do it every Friday night. And anyone who wants to be social bicycling and to try out the bike paths in Broomfield is welcome to join us. Some of our achievements, though, because John Hubbard is great with the advocacy and promoting bicycle infrastructure, the Broomfield Bike Club does none of that. We do nothing but have fun. However, in the interest of promoting bicycle infrastructure in conjunction with BroomfieldBikes.org, who suggested it, we decided to participate in the Broomfield Days Parade this year, where we were able to commemorate the bicycling history of Broomfield, including the Cycle Bells, the first bike club in 1964, the founding of the Broomfield Bike Club in 1972 with Brenda and Pat, and we even were able to commemorate Pierre Lacamora as Broomfield's first cyclist using our bicycle float, which incidentally won the best in its category, which incidentally, category is car club. So the Broomfield Bicycle Club won first place in the category of car club in Broomfield Days, which is quite an achievement for a bicycle club. So that's all about the history of Broomfield Bicycle Club and bicycling in Broomfield. And we hope sometime in the near future, you will all join us and revel in our accomplishments. Thank you all tonight for coming. And if you need any more information on bicycling history in Broomfield, you can find it all on our website at broomfieldbikes.club or broomfieldbike.club. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. That was excellent. Wonderful timing too. Do we have any questions for Jason or for John from anybody?
I have a question. This is Archer Yates.
Go for it.
Number one, you say you've got a new bike map. Where do you get the map? Number two, what are you going to do that you can actually to bring in the community into bicycling? I moved from Asheville, North Carolina. We had the Blue Ridge Bicycle Club. We started a novice group to encourage and mentor beginning riders. It was hugely successful. We had as many as 148 names on the list to send out when we would have a ride. So you need to do something to bring in the community, not just about yourself. Number two, all of these grandiose ideas of what they're doing in Europe and stuff like that is wonderful. That's straight from the League of American Bicyclists. But it really doesn't do that much in the near term on what you can do for the bike riders. Maps, signs on the trails. I know last time I rode Lake Link Trail, you really had to know where you were going. You would never get there. So there's a lot. I'm like Patty. I live where we live, you could call it the Boot Hill of Broomfield. Broomfield doesn't even know we're here except at tax time or whenever they're running for election. But trying to get to going east from where we live. Now, we got 108th. That's got a nice sidewalk. There's a bike lane. Get to 108th across Wadsworth Parkway. It's a 2-lane road and you're on your own. So, I mean, there are things that could be done. The third thing is finally, and talking to the Broomfield Open Space Director, is a lovely lady that she's always responds to my questions, sends me emails, calls me when I have a question. And that is, how are you going to link the trails? Now, let me give you an example where you've got that great pedestrian bridge over the railroad track, coming across, and then you get to there. How do you link that with, say, 3rd, 4th, 5th 6th Street heading east in Broomfield. How do you get there from here to there? So these are some things that in a near term, that with a little bit of coordinated effort and reminding and talking to the city council, it doesn't take a lot of money to print these signs, but try to link these things together. So I appreciate the great history of stuff, but that's history. We're now. And so we want to get out and ride our bikes and have fun, but going east from west to east, it's a challenge. So I would encourage you to do that. And secondly, have the signs. And then what are you going to do for the community? And when you get to there at that point, bring people in, mentor them, nurture them, make them feel safe, make them want to have fun on their bikes. And that's all I have to say.
Awesome. Thank you, Archer. John, do you have any response to any of those thoughts? Or Jason?
Yeah, thanks for your comments. Just quickly, there is a project that the city and county has underway to do wayfinding, which is more signage on the trails. I agree, it can be a struggle to know exactly which way you're going, what trail you're on, and where it leads. The open space team did just come out with new maps. Those are available for free. All you have to do is walk into the city and county building and ask for one. And that's a great place to start. As far as, bringing in more people, absolutely. It's an open umbrella. Riders of all abilities are welcome to get out there and ride. And, the goal, right, with safer infrastructure is that umbrella gets even wider, the tent gets even larger for more people to be able to ride, not just able-bodied adult males.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. And I put in the chat that if anybody's on this Zoom call and they don't get our Sustainable Broomfield newsletters, please just email us at sustainablebroomfield@gmail.com. And we will generally do a follow-up newsletter on this meeting with a link to the video and then other links like everything that John provided in his PowerPoint there. So definitely give us an email if you're not already getting our Sustainable Broomfield newsletters so that you can access a lot of that follow-up information. Do we have any other questions for Jason and John? All right. Well, I want to just say thank you so much for your presenting, guys. You did an awesome job. I hope that this really helps to promote both of your organizations a little bit and get a little more involvement. I know that's kind of all you really want is just more people to help out and advocate for things and participate. So hopefully some of these folks will hear about it, spread the word, and it'll be a boost to everybody. So thank you everyone for coming tonight and have a great evening, everybody.
And thank you for hosting, Brianna.
No problem. Have a good one.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.